So I just would like to welcome you all here today. Thank you so much for coming out on a Saturday morning. And hello and welcome to our wonderful communities in other parts of Australia who I hope, if technology is working, you're joining us through the live streaming. We have people at the Sunshine Coast and in Sydney and a few other pockets and places. And hopefully in the future, if we do these, now that we know we can in fact work out the technology, we'll be able to do it even more broadly. So today I'm really pleased because what we've done is respond to a number of community people asking to come together and tell the story of what's been happening across our nation, some of the quiet and not so quiet levels of destruction of our natural world and people's communities. For those who don't know me, I'm Michelle Maloney. I'm the National Convener of the Australian Earth Laws Alliance, AILA, and as a group of lawyers and other folks very interested in ensuring that we ask questions of industrial societies, legal, economic and other systems, I'm very proud to offer this space for people to come together and to talk about issues that are really important to them, and most importantly to find solutions and work together for a better future. Our tribunal, the Australian People's Tribunal for Community and Nature's Rights, acknowledges the sovereignty of the First Nations peoples of the continent we now call Australia. We know that First Peoples' rights and obligations to country were never ceded by treaty or in any other way, and the tribunal proceedings acknowledge and respect First Nation peoples' laws and the ecologically sustainable custodianship that they shared across Australia for millennia. I also like to acknowledge the impacts of colonisation, the impacts of my people, the whitefellas who came to Australia, and I also want to acknowledge the strong and deep love that I and others have for country and our strong, deep desire to build a future that involves all of us equally sharing and respecting First Peoples and the future of this beautiful continent. So our tribunal is a truly humble, unfunded, completely independent. There's no government funding, certainly. There's no philanthropic funding. In fact, there's no funding at all. There are no vested interests here. There's just a bunch of people really worried about what we see day to day in country and what's happening with some communities around Australia. So what we're trying to build is a permanent place, a unique forum for ecological and social justice in Australia. AILA will hang on to this space and open it for everybody for as long as we have breath and can continue. We aim to respond to situations where our current legal political system is not working. We don't want to create conflict or division. We don't want to name and shame. What we're interested in is public inquiries and ecological justice cases brought on behalf of flora, fauna, ecosystems, bioregions and local communities, people and unpeople all around the continent. So what we're interested in is hearing people and bearing witness and working together to find solutions. And one of our greatest concerns is that in a world dominated by corporate power, governments who aren't always being the best and shiniest leaders, there's an awful lot of information out there, but it's fractured, it's divided. It's really hard to understand sometimes what's actually going on. So the little tribunal that we're setting up helps people come together and get a snapshot of what the heck is going on across a particular issue. And so the issue that we're looking at today is the impact of industrial-scale agriculture on the living world, and that means people, plants, animals, and all of the life systems that support it. The primary focus is to hear about the impacts and also the solutions and positive ways forward that can restore biodiversity, soil, water systems, embrace compassionate farming practices, and support Indigenous knowledge systems and ongoing cultural practices that have been interrupted but not stopped by colonisation. As climate change increases, the impact of droughts, the shortage of water, the changing of soils, the destruction of biodiversity, we have to work harder and harder and harder to find systems that we can use to live here forever. At the moment, many of our agricultural practices are directly causing extreme deforestation, vegetation loss, erosion, and I'm personally very deeply worried. I grew up in the Brigalow Belt. I got great artesian bore water running through my veins, and every time I go out, I just recently did a 3,000 kilometre round road trip, and all I see is devastation. Hundreds and thousands of hectares of dead trees. It's literally like a graveyard. Every time the poor trees try to come back, they clear them. hundreds and thousands of kilometres of fences keeping the cattle healthy and happy and the emus and the kangaroos dead on the side of the road. The ecological injustices we see around us, I grew up with them and I don't want to see them anymore. And I'm very interested in what other people think about how to do things better and do things differently. So today we're very pleased to have the beginning of a process. We'll talk a little bit out throughout the day about what we're going to do as next steps. This isn't the beginning and the end. What we have done, though, is invite selected speakers representing different groups and people doing different things across the continent. So today, we invite the audience to enjoy and to listen and to learn and to share. It's not an open forum. We're going to have a steady invitational list of people sharing some experiences. And then we're going to open up for a 3 to 5 month period where people can continue to share with us through oral and written testimonies and collect them through our website. So that's the brief introduction. And what I'd really love to do now is turn to our other panel members. And again, we're just people up on a panel bearing witness and inviting others to share with us. I'll briefly introduce and then let them speak for themselves. We have Mary Graham. She's a Kombumerri person and an Adjunct Associate Professor of Philosophy and Politics at University of Queensland. Ross Williams has got a long history of sustainable land and country management and working for people in place, and he's a Bindal Juru person. We have Gil Boehringer, who is a lawyer and extensive experience across a range of both legal, academic and permanent People's Tribunal work around the world. And Quinn McCarrick, who's a lecturer in law at UTAS, the University in Tasmania, and was actually recently a panel member on the People's Tribunal against Monsanto in Europe. So I'm very privileged to be with these people who understand the power of country and the power of people. So I'd like to turn to Mary to make some perhaps opening remarks if you wish, or just say good day.
Sorry.
Can you see?
Can I see?
No. Over that way.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Forgot about the computers.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. As Michelle was saying, I'm a Kombumerri person of the Yugambeh language group down the Gold Coast. On my mother's side, she is a Waka Waka person from the Burnett River district. I don't know if people know those areas. But yes, I'd just like to, and I acknowledge the traditional owners of this area, the Turrbal people on the north side and the Jagera peoples on the south side, the traditional owners. The main thing I wanted to say was that, following on from Michelle, is from our point of view, from an Aboriginal point of view, the whole idea of the People's Court, a tribunal, and also the whole movement of environmental care fits in perfectly with our own notion of the laws of reciprocity and stewardship, or if you like, the law of obligation, because our own old ontological system is based on that, of our duties in our jurisdictional regions of looking after, directly looking after land, but also looking after the interests of ancestors, because it's the ancestors, their rules, their morality, their ways of doing things, of running the country, basically. That's what we're following. But also it's about looking after the interests, the obligations we have towards the future generations. They sit side by side, ancestors and future generations, and we're in the middle. All of us are in the middle. So we've got a lot of work to do. There's work to be carried out besides our own individual lives every day, just getting on, basically. So we're obliged, and it is definitely, it's a system and a law of obligation, not of individualism, of individual rights and so on. So we're obliged to do this work of looking after the land, and that's the main thing that I want to say. And I really like and respect Ayala and the whole idea of the People's Tribunal, because that's, as things stand in the world today, that's about the only place you can do this, apart from going this other way of revolutionary change and so on. And the problem with that...
Which we're not ruling out.
Which we're not ruling... Oh, right. Okay, we're not ruling out. But the problem with the revolutionary ideal is that usually what gets replaced is exactly what went before. so it's a bit hard, it's a bit difficult. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. And Ross, did you want to say hello? And
Yeah, hello. Ross Williams, Bindal, Juru, from the Townsville to Bowen area. That's from my father's side. My mother's side is Torres Strait, from the islands of Erebor and Mer. And I have a wonderful opportunity in terms of having both sides of culture. I'm a land listener. I hear the earth speak continuously. I hear the earth and I hear the air. But that's a teaching that I've been brought up with. I've spent a lot of time with a lot of elders and cut my teeth as a young person dealing with land culture, if you like, and how to listen to the land and how to listen to those voices of the land and understanding what that means. I've been fortunate enough in 30 years to be able to, over 30 years, let's be honest with myself, over 30 years dealing with land specific. So I, as a young person, lived off the land. My parents didn't have much, but what we did have was so rich and so valuable. And I watched over those period of time, the land change, environment change, the circumstances change. And the reason why I'm involved in this is purely because I think things need to happen, things need to change. And I've seen change rapidly in just a short period of time, and so probably many of you, and I'm worried about what the future may hold for our children and our grandchildren. So, yeah, thank you.
thank you, Ross. Thank you. And Gil, can I invite you to just say hello and introduce yourself in any way you wish?
Yes, I'm Honorary Senior Research Fellow and former Dean at Macquarie University Law School. This will be my 12th People's Tribunal, and I must say that the last three have, I think, prepared me well for today's proceedings. I was on the Permanent People's Tribunal that looked at genocide in Myanmar, fracking across the globe, and human rights violations and crimes against humanity in the Philippines. I think today it's really a wonderful symbolic occasion. Here we are talking about alternatives to the way in which the system we live within deals with agriculture, land, people, the birds, the trees, the water, and this represents, I think, the way ahead. Burrowing in, hollowing out those repressive and exploitative relationships which exist and creating something new. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gil. And Gwynn, would you like to say greetings?
Thank you. My name is Quinn McCarran, an international lawyer and academic. Most recently, I was amicus curiae to the International Monsanto Tribunal, which convened in The Hague. The International Monsanto Tribunal looked at the multinational Monsanto, which is both an agrochemical company and a biotechnology company, and looked at its conduct in the light, or measured it against the UN General Principles on Human Rights and Business, or John Ruggie's laws. So I assisted the Monsanto Tribunal in relation to the question of ecocide, understood to be the significant and durable destruction of an ecosystem or ecosystem service upon which human populations rely. So both the International Monsanto Tribunal and this tribunal itself follows a long tradition of people's tribunals dating back as far as the end of the Second World War, if not beyond. John Paul Sartre, who convened the Russell Tribunal at the end of the Second World War, famously asked, why had we appointed ourselves? And he answered his question by saying because there is no other forum, no existing jurisdiction for us to answer these questions. So people's tribunals and civil society initiatives like this inhabit a space that is currently unoccupied by formal legal courts and processes. So people's tribunals lead a progressive discourse. They document relevant issues and challenges. They illuminate problems within our society. They help to solve problems and recast our thinking so that we can imagine new ways of seeing the world. We can do this because we're not formally constrained by the judicial processes of formal courts. And history has shown that people's tribunals do, in fact, lead the way in terms of discourse because they show that it's possible. This tribunal will show that it's possible to make it possible that nature is a subject of legal proceedings as opposed to an object of legal proceedings. And that's a major mind shift. So this tribunal, like all of those that have gone before, gets its legitimacy from the global citizenry. And every Australian has a stake in these proceedings here today. So I'd like to thank all the speakers that have come forth to assist the tribunal.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do today is, if you've seen the program, we have basically 4 sessions. We're going to start with some international context, and we're very lucky to have a number of international guests with us who've been in Australia for a number of other activities, but we also co-designed some events so that they could be with us here today, and we'll introduce them shortly. We'll then have a broader look at the Australian context, First Nation food systems and some of the impacts of post-1788 agricultural systems. I have a large and heartfelt apology from Bruce Pascoe, who actually was very unwell about a week ago and came out of hospital. So I'm personally a little devastated he couldn't join us. But we do have the wonderful Warren Saunders, who's actually just arrived. Where are you, Warren? Oh, there he is. Hello. He's going to be having a chat to us about some of the food system stuff as well. And then, oh, you're Fred. Warren's on his way. It's my vision, man. Sorry. We've got the wonderful Fred joining us as well. He's going to be in the other session. Lovely. So then we're going to have a case study. It's not so much a case, but an overview of the impacts of agriculture on the Brigalow Belt bioregion, because it's a place that's been particularly devastated by industrial-scale agriculture. And then after lunch, we'll have a very special beginning of a broader community conversation about the impacts of agriculture and irrigation on the Murray-Darling Basin, with a special focus on the Darling River and Menindee Lakes. So before I introduce our Earth advocates, who will be very kindly inviting our speakers up and handling each session, and then we'll just be asking a couple of questions. But before I do that, I just wanted to remind folks that this People's Tribunal is not alone. We're part of the International Tribunal for the Rights of Mother Earth, which was created in Ecuador in 2014. Myself and Cormac Cullinan, who will be speaking shortly, we're part of that tribunal. And it's now an international space where people bring issues and cases and concerns to a People's Tribunal that's global and that looks at issues of power imbalance and environmental destruction all around the world. So we're part of that, but we're also Aussie and we're unique and we're going to do it our way. So I'm very excited about today. The only other thing is we do have some technical challenges. We've got a few folks joining us via Zoom, a couple of pre-recorded talks, and we're even going to try and grab Catherine McBride, who's very pregnant out on her farm, by phone sometime today in our discussion around the Darling River. So bear with us. As I often say, the wheels might fall off, but I have faith that with a group like this, we'll work together to put those wheels back on. I'd love you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the learning and the listening. I'm sure there's going to be some very sad things that we'll be talking about today, but we're going to wrap it up at the end of the day with some initial comments, responses, and even some initial recommendations from us and next steps as to what we might do based on what folks are interested in having the People's Tribunal do next. So what I'd like to do now is I might actually introduce both of our lovely Earth advocates. If you'd like to swing around or stand up and so we've got Isaac Beale and Maggie Turnbull. Can we all please say hello and a big clapping for them? Isaac and Maggie are basically taking turns managing each session and inviting up speakers. So we're calling them our Earth advocates because we think the Earth represents both our people and the other living world. So thank you very much. And I also just want to really acknowledge the phenomenal effort of all the volunteers who are helping today. So we've got Damien Bright is helping out with PowerPoint, fingers crossed. We've got the fabulous James Lee, who if you've were at the symposium the last 2 days, nothing much works without James. So thank you, James. And we've got a new volunteer, haven't we? Carolina? Yes, thank you. Carolina will be our timekeeper, keeping an eye on things. So everyone's a volunteer, and I just thank everybody here for being part of this today.